What's the next step in the progression for Joe Milton as a quarterback, you think?
First of all, Joe's been awesome, and that's since the bowl game in January when we got back. But it's long before that too. He's continued to mature inside of our program. Has a great understanding of who he is, where he wants to go. He's on a mission every single day to do that. Wants to have a great impact on his teammates. His leadership has continued to grow. His daily habits. Love what he's done. Had a great spring, and can't wait to get in training camp with him.
Talk about representing Tennessee with your guys here at SEC Media Days.
Yeah, what a great opportunity for these three guys to come into to Mid-State, an area of the states that is vitally important to our future success. It's played a big role in our past successes as well, and they get an opportunity to be in front of the country and for people to figure out who they are. And these are three great representatives, all guys that are on our leadership council that do it the right way every day.
Josh, are you a next step guy as far as big picture with the program? I mean, do you talk about with your players what the next step is?
We're constantly talking about how we're going to improve. You put your goals out in front of the football team when you start any quarter of your off season. That can be in January when they first get back, to beginning of spring ball, to when we start training camp. But at the end of the day, then it becomes about your daily accountability to your habits and to your teammates, and about your growth, and competing extremely hard every day. This group's been phenomenal. There were a lot of great moments last year for sure. At the end of the day, we didn't reach our goals, and for us individually, we had to take steps this offseason. Really like what we've done. Collectively as a group, we got to get there when we kick off here in about 44 days back here in Nashville.
Did you have to make that message to your team that you didn't reach your goals? We're kind of resetting for the offseason in terms of motivation and not living in the past of last season?
Well, I think it's important that you always talk about the things that matter inside of your program with your players. Did I feel any greater urgency with this group than I have with past groups? No. This group, the success that they had a year ago only happens because of the work that they put in. We're still on that journey to become what we're capable of individually and collectively as a program. High goals, high aspirations. They knew that we had areas that we had to improve upon too.
For you personally, Coach, how do you make sure that you help lead this team and take that next step as a head coach?
Well, it's about constant growth for me too. How do I get better? That can be in communication, it can be in game day management, it can be in subtle things that we're doing in our off season, it can be in messaging. It's about constant growth for all of us, and that happens because it's a two-way street inside of our program. I talk about great seasons happen because of leadership and accountability inside of the locker room, developing these guys as leaders, so it's an ongoing process for me too.
Josh, how do you deal with the recruiting restrictions, which you guys have already been dealing with the last couple of years? How do you plan those out? When to make cuts?
Well, I think that's one of the great things in me coming here. The leadership that we have from President Boyd, Chancellor Plowman, to Danny, our athletic director. Being able to have real transparent conversations with them. Where do we think this thing's going to go from day one when we first got here? Self-imposing some things, from scholarship reductions to things that we did on the recruiting side of it. To be honest, where we're at today, with 5 years ago, the penalties that came down, we've been handling almost all of these things at a higher percentage than what we're actually going to have to over the last 5 years. Our recruits that just enrolled, none of those guys felt any of the effects of it during the course of the recruiting process. We're going to do it the right way. We've been transparent with recruits. I think it's important that you're open and honest with them. It was that way with our staff when I was hiring them while they've been here. It's been with our current players, and certainly with the recruiting side of it as well.
Can you be flexible? Like if you say we're gonna cut 3 official visits, can you be flexible and say no, we're going to cut 5 or we're going to cut 2, or can you be flexible, within a month or so out?
Yeah, there's flexibility for us to navigate the space and take the necessary things that we need to when we're it's most advantageous for us within a certain dialogue and regulations that they gave us as well.
As a head coach and a recruiter, how much of a relief was it to you when there was no postseason ban tag on this sanction?
Yeah, because of our administration found out about it, reported it, did an investigation, welcomed the NCAA coming in and follow up on their own investigation, been transparent and had great dialogue with them from the very beginning. I felt great that we were going to land where the administration thought we were going to land, but I find out the night before that it's coming out. At that point, you don't know what you don't know. So when we got the word the following morning, it was a sense of relief that, you know, our players, it would have been easy for us to take a bowl ban in year one when I first took the job. You know, we were down to 65 scholarship players. Nobody knew what the season was going to look like. Our administration just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do for the players that stuck around. And it wasn't the right thing to do. And so the way that they navigated it, you know, the process with NCAA, I'm glad that we were able to come out with, you know, a verdict where our guys are going to have an opportunity to compete for all the things that they want to.
Josh, did you feel strongly about not taking that bowl ban just so that your players could experience the bowl?
I did, because at the end of the day, the guys that were we had 35 guys that left our program. You know, the guys that were around were the guys that cared about the Power T. They cared about their teammates. In all reality, they were guys that weren't a part of what was going on. And you know, I think it's tough to punish innocent guys. And so I felt like it was extremely important that we tried to navigate that space the right way and allow those guys to compete. You guys, you know, if you date back to when we first got here 2 years ago, we never set a ceiling on what we could accomplish. Those guys have been our guys, my guys from the very beginning. It's been a huge part of why we've grown the way that we have and as quickly as we have. But it absolutely was the right thing to do.
And do you think it helped, Josh, do you think it helped this last season, the fact that you could, you know, handle it that way that first year?
Well, I think, you know, the culture that we've built because of the players that are in our program, and as a staff and leadership within our athletic department, how we've handled all those situations, the communication that we've had, the transparency, the love and the connection that we've built between each other, that all certainly parlayed into, you know, how we played and competed last year, how we handled adversity, you know, throughout the course of the season, and ultimately why we finished it the way that we did.
I'm curious, in case like people on the outside may not know, like how crippling can a postseason ban be, not only for recruiting but from a revenue generating standpoint, so to avoid something like that?
Yeah, I mean, financially, we're paying a penalty that's going to, you know, any of those benefits would be lost. I don't recommend anybody going through this. You know, I took the job in late January, had to hire an entire staff. We were down 35 scholarship players. We were playing with 65 scholarship athletes on our roster when we kicked off that year. Most teams were at 90, maybe even 95 because of COVID seniors. The deficit at which we took the field was real. I don't think people, you know, I think when the penalty came out, a lot of people just looked forward. Well, you better go back and look backwards and see, you know, the things that we self-imposed and how we had to navigate that space. You know, the uncertainty, how other teams have beat us up on the recruiting trail, you know, sensationalized it a little bit, potentially of what was going to happen and transpire. We've only navigated the space because we've been thoughtful. We put the student athlete first. We have great transparency and communication inside of our program. That's with our staff, that's with our current players, and it's with recruits. And you know, that's why I feel like, you know, as much of a climb as we had in the first 24 months, the trajectory of where we were and where we can go, I don't know if there's ever been a better time to be involved.
Josh, you're looking at your roster now. I think you've got more than 30 seniors in terms of scholarship guys, more than 30 freshmen too. Is that unique to have such a blend of old experienced guys and a bunch of new guys that haven't played?
There's essentially 2 recruiting classes that are gone from our roster, and that's how you end up with the numbers kind of being what they are inside of our roster. And so there's a unique blend of experience, guys that have been inside the program that have helped lay the foundation, a lot of young guys that have come into it. I absolutely love the young guys inside of our program. Their maturity off of the field, let alone their maturity inside of our building, who they are, how they attack every day, how they compete and love with their brothers. It's a really good dynamic inside the building right now.
Josh, what does it say about your program? You've got 2 6-year seniors here. You've had other 6-year seniors. What does it say about your program that players want to stay around?
Well, I think it speaks to they love and enjoy the process and the journey of what we do, you know, 365 days out of the year. They care about the people that they, you know, sit next to in the locker room, that they're, you know, enjoying their time as being a part of, you know, this program and being a part of All Nation. I think they see, you know, the continued opportunities and climb that we have left in front of us. They can also see that they're developing inside of our program, and that's on the football field with the position coaches, coordinators, what we're doing schematically to put them in a position to be successful, their growth, what we're doing in the weight room, their continued growth as an athlete and how they're developing. And that can be seen in the draft. You know, over the last 2 years, 10 draft picks. I think the top 8 in the country, top 10 in the country, and as far as the number of draft picks last year, 5 in the first 3 rounds. That's top 2 in the country. There's a lot of positive things going on as far as the development and enjoyment inside of our program for our players.
Speaking of growth, the Jacob Warren back to his 5th year, how have you seen him grow in the tight end room as a leader?
Yeah, +1 on that too, I think, on the years. Jacob's have been a fantastic leader inside of our program from the moment that I've gotten there. Really mature, cares about the people around him, very thoughtful in how he wants to improve, has a great plan, and works that plan every single day. His maturity, his leadership has been instrumental in what we've done. That's in the past, and it's certainly been felt since we got back in January.
Josh, going back to that first season, was it tempting at time to try to adjust the way you wanted to play, given the depth, especially on defense, you know, in terms of going so fast offensively, running so many plays, or why was it important to you not to do that, I guess is the question.
Yeah, you know, the tempo at times can, you know, I think if you look at, you know, number of series that we had to actually defend last year, we were like 38th in the country as far as, you know, most defended series. We want to have a balance to what we're doing. The tempo is a way to apply pressure to that. I think when you take over a program, it's important that you get started on your journey of how you want to play. Subtly, every year we're going to be different, all 3 phases of the game, and you know, try to put our kids in the best position. That's through scheme. Part of our scheme can be tempo on offense, but you know what we're doing defensively. Certainly in the transfer portal, we were hit hard. That's why a majority of the kids that we did bring in, and I'm going to go back to, you know, 2 years ago, you know, we lost 35 programs. We were still limited in the number of kids that you could bring on campus. No matter how many you lost at that time within NCAA rules, we were limited to 25 annual counters that year. But a majority of the kids that we did bring in to you know, kind of patch our roster were on the defensive side of the ball, and that certainly was a part of the reason.
We've seen more behind the scenes of what the program was, the culture was before you got here. Did you realize all that stuff when you got in, like the culture that you were inheriting and how much you needed to change it?
You know, when I got there, the second semester had already started. So one of the unique things, you know, it's hard taking over a program that late. There's about 2 months of work that we're missing and going into an off season with you guys. The one thing it did afford me when I took the job is they were already into their off season, and so it gave me a chance to evaluate the players a little bit that first week. What they were doing could be weight room. I also got a real sense of what the culture and energy was like inside the building, what was going on inside the locker room too. So it gave me a clearer picture of you know what was going on. That didn't change, you know, who we are and what we're about, is because that's who we are and it's what we're about.
Talked about starting the season here in Nashville. If you have to start at a neutral site to open the year, why is this a good spot for you?
Man, this is a city and an area of the state, mid-state, that's vitally important. It's played a huge part in our past success and will play a huge part in our future success as well. And so it's an opportunity for us to come over to our fan base, play in a great city. It's going to be an absolutely electric environment. And Vol Nation will show out in big droves, I'm sure. So cannot wait to see them in 44 days.
Coach, looking at college football as a whole, and a lot of changes over the last several years with NIL, super conferences, transfer portal. How would you describe the direction the sports headed in? Do you like that direction?
I'm not sure you know what tomorrow is going to bring. And so at this point in college football, I think it's important that you analyze where you're at, how do you best navigate that, and also be ready to shift on a moment's notice. And you know, all the things that every head coach, but every program is dealing with. It's a difficult time. There's a lot more variables than there used to be, you know, a decade ago or 2 decades ago. At the same time, it's the hand that we're dealt, and love where I'm at and who I'm competing with every day.
What has impressed you most about the way your players have kind of handled the drama over the last few months with stuff coming down?
You know, I found out the night before. We called a team meeting at that point to let them know when I got done with workouts we'd have a team meeting. It's the time of year where a lot of staff is gone. I was actually out of town. We did it via Zoom. Inside of our building, our guys really haven't been focused on that in any way. I'm not sure that they've talked about it a whole lot. And, they, you know, I'm sure the next morning saw, you know, things on social media that it was gonna be coming out and maybe what was coming out, but it was a really quick team meeting. They took the information, were ready to go compete and get after it.
How big was it
Last
to
question.
get on the phone with recruits? Because they see headlines, they see, you know, this and that, and, you know, I guess there's a lot of ignorance there because they just don't understand like what it all means to be able to, you know, fill in the blanks for them. Just kind of like how a minute ago you were quick to say we were 38th, you know, in the country in defended series on defense, because, you know, the notion out there that the defense is always on the field, to be able to hit those recruits back with, hey, it's not the case. How big is that to be able to hit these kids and just let them understand what's real and what's not?
Well, I've, you know, for 2 years, and the recruits that we did sign, man, a ton of trust from the recruits and the families, because there were a lot of unknowns and they were getting hit by other schools with some things that were probably a little or a lot sensationalized. However, to be able to put this thing to bed, have it, you know, on paper, what's actually transpired, then for us to get on the phone with all of them, really a lot of them at one time, to be able to talk through, you know, how we've already navigated the space in 2 years, the reality of what it's going to look like going forward, but to say, hey, this is the recruiting process you've already been a part of, and have you felt anything? Right? They haven't, and so at the end of the day, they can tell that this isn't going to impact their ability to have great players surround them, to be able to, you know, play at the highest level, win a bunch of individual awards, be an All-American, and compete for championships.